to Shifting Religious Concepts. We are SRC. So pleased to be here with you today for a novel look at the Bible and what it means for all of us. My name is Mark Thomas, and I'll be moderating today's program. Our panel, as always, are Anala D., Archie Sanders, and Dr. Kadar Griffo. If you've attended our broadcast or watched our YouTube videos, you know the in-depth perspective they all bring to our conversations on the Bible. If you are new to the show, please go to our newsletter for an in-depth bio on all our excellent contributors. So quickly, we're just going to get going today because we got a lot of ground to cover, but just to sort of pull our heads out of the weeds and take a look around, we like to do a little reminder sometime. And today, I want to remind the audience of SRC's mission in presenting these broadcasts. We know that the Bible was written by master storytellers who possessed a great understanding of the universe, both physically and spiritually. The Bible tells us, often with great symbolism or allegory, how humans relate through their bodies and consciousness to this reality. SRC knows that the beginning of grasping this knowledge from our ancient ancestors, is knowing that we are God. Many episodes ago, actually, Anala shared her take on what we're talking about when we say we are God. She said, if you take a cup of water from the ocean, it is of the ocean. Now think of that cup of water as though it were you and the ocean is God. This is how we think of ourselves. SRC says that God is not separate from us. We are one and the same. We know the ancients also knew this as they wrote their biblical stories. So, speaking of stories, let's turn now to the book of Revelation, and you've got some takeaways you want to share.
Absolutely. Let's just see if we can share those this morning. Okay. So the first takeaway is where and how Revelation came about. We've talked about that. We've shared that and shared the role of Paul and how he helped to bring Revelation, the book of Revelation, get it into the Bible, Paul and Mark, of course. We talked about the real purpose of the book called Revelation, your body in the book of Revelation, what and who is the light of the world. We're going to be getting and talking about that. And what is the significance of Revelation in your everyday life? So all those things. So just kind of just be listening for that information, because we will be talking about all of that as we continue to unpack the book of Revelation.
Okay, thanks for that. Now we're going to stay with you for a few minutes because I know that we're going to keep our head just a little bit above the book right now. You're going to give us a nutshell of what we've been talking about so far in Revelations and maybe a few other thoughts. So why don't you go ahead with that?
As we continue to unpack the book of Revelation, I'm reminded that not long ago, I was one of those people who would not have wanted to hear anything that Dr. Griffo, Pastor Archie, and you, Mark Thomas, not any of those things that you were talking about, because I was so rooted in what I had been taught all of my life. But I am so glad that I'm now awakened and that my mind is awakened to understand and see what the Bible really means to us. I've read the Bible before, but I didn't understand it. When I read it, I didn't put myself in the Bible. And the book of Revelation is really, to me, the book of Revelation should have been the first book of the Bible, because in my mind, the book of Revelation really teaches us about who we are. I want to emphasize a couple points today that I believe the first point is that I believe the book of Revelations were written by people who definitely didn't understand the symbolisms of the Bible. And if they did understand the symbolisms, they were not supposed to tell us about them. As Pastor Archie mentioned, I think last week, I'm so glad they did not destroy the book, because it's so much information in there, not only the allegories and the symbolisms that tell us how we're supposed to conduct our life and how the stars, the universe, the planets and everything relate to us, and how we think and how we can rise to a higher consciousness. I realized this. I was thinking about this yesterday. It is almost like you get to go to this class, and when you get to the class, you sign a document to say, listen, this is only for you. This is not for you to tell everybody else. We're going to show you how to do it. Now, just think about it. I don't know during that time if they paid money to go and spend 2 or 3 weeks or 6 months, but you definitely would have to have the means to go and do something like that. So they go and they learn all this stuff. But now you have Paul and you have Mark here that goes, shucks, I can benefit from this. So I know they told me I'm an initiate and I'm not supposed to share it, but I'm going to benefit from this, even though they didn't know all of what everything meant. So they go out and they share it, but they really weren't supposed to share it in that way. So I'm just glad that we today, humans, that we can get this information because it helps us to learn how we move to the higher consciousness. And we talk about initiates all the time, but I want to just say that initiates were those who desired to become ascended masters. And when I say ascended, have a higher consciousness. Initiates were those people who, after going through rites or passages, were accepted into a group or society of society. And I know that Pastor Archie and Dr. Griffo have both talked about this. And the second point that I want to make is that what we are uncovering here is that the book of Revelation is about each one of us. Make no mistake about it. The book teaches us how we can tap into each part of our bodies, talks about the 7 chakras and how the universe relates to our bodies. And it even talks about how the universe relates to our birth. It was no mistake that we came here. The book of Revelation shows us that. It shows us the chart on when we were born, why we were born, and what we're supposed to do and ascend while we are here. And the third thing I want to say is that our desire here in SRC is to impart to you knowledge and understanding that serve to release your mind from religious bondage. We're not trying to, we say this all the time, we are not a religion. We're not trying to, recruit people. I get emails that say, some people say, I just thank you for unpacking. Then some people say, how can you talk about my Jesus kind of thing like that? If there was ever a person by the name of Jesus, if there was a person by the name of Jesus or Jesus at that time, that person was doing the same thing we're doing, trying to tell people who they are in God, who God is in them. That's all. If there was a person by the name of Jesus, and I have not found any records that could to prove that, but if there was, that person was doing the same thing we're doing. Jesus, even in the Bible, never asked to be king over anybody. They try to make him be king in the stories. He never said he was just the Son of God. Man wrote that. What he said is, we're all sons and daughters of God. That's what he was saying. But it was man who took that and made it into something else because he wanted they wanted the masses to worship them. They wanted the masses to come to them instead of knowing they can go to God directly. So then when they created the story, then they said, okay, well, what we'll do then is we'll have everybody go to Jesus, but now you got to come to me to even understand that. So it was about control. And what SRC is doing is hoping to release everyone's mind so that they can be free to know that who they are, free to know that God is you and God is me, and that the universe and everything else is a part of us. And that's what I wanted to share this morning.
Okay, thank you for that. That's important information. So let's pick up where we left off last week, Pastor Archie. We got to, in chapter 3, we got to the 7th church of the angels of the 7th church, Laodicea, in verse 14 of chapter 3, where, let's see here, where it speaks of the beginning of the creation of God. And you and Anala had a great conversation about activating higher consciousness and not being lukewarm, as the scripture says in verse 16. So if you would, could you pick it up from somewhere around there, Archie? And let's continue on with that and open it up to the panel a little bit too.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This it is exciting to research and as Anala said, we're trying to get people to understand who they are. And let's do a little research because, Apollonius, you got to understand, Apollonius became who they call Jesus. As you research and as we look and see what was done, the church fathers done, with what they found that Apollonius wrote, then his disciple Demas came behind him and did a biography on him and so forth and so on. This is the key. Research, 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 research. You gotta look, because see, before we jump out there and beat people up, you know, and say we're caught and all that kind of stuff, do some research. We were deep into what this chapter 3 the last time. I think we were right down to the last few verses there, and I think Mark, we were at the chapter 3, 14 through the 22nd. We start talking about Laodicea,
Right.
that church, and as we had said earlier, that we were looking at the section of the throat, the thyroid area. The initiate has to learn all about who we are as far as being initiated into this mystery. And I must say that from what I've researched so far concerning all the chakras and everything, that Apollonius himself was a master. Now, he was a master, but as we said last week, I think if they had put in the Bible, if the church fathers had known that this was going to open us up to ourselves, they would have never put this in the Bible. So now it starts to talking about the church of Laodicea, and we're talking about, we said last week, I believe, about the communication level where we are right here. The reason that this chakra here is not initiated is because of our morals. First of all, have low, our morals so low that we don't love as the god Venus spoke about the Venus, about it was about loving. You know, I've learned something down through these years that I've preached, and if you're not loving, your message don't go far. Your message don't go far, and most of us, our morals are so low that we really don't portray love as we're. I've seen a lot of mean preachers, and like I said last week, I think coming into church, ushers, mean as the devil. You know, and you think, well, this supposed, you know, people supposed to be loving us, but it's evidently that a lot of people have not allowed love to come through, because they're not understanding, first of all, who we are. Once we realize who we are, and it talks here about that communication level, and it goes on. It started talking about the logos announces itself as the cosmic substance, and neither cold nor hot, having neither the dispassionate reason nor the devotional fervor, but lukewarm and nauseating to the higher mind. See, let me read this again. Neither cold nor hot, having neither the dispassionate reason nor the devotional fervor, but lukewarm and nauseating to the higher mind, the lower mind, yet prides itself on its supposed wealth of intellectual attainments, yet without the goal of solarical refinement and the white garment of purity, these attainments are meager and unloving. I think Dr. Griffo spoke about that color gold before, and it's talking here about how we have a devotional fervor, but the lower mind always prides itself of having a high intellect, but it really doesn't have it. We may brag about that, and I'm going to ask Dr. Griffo concerning that color gold. Could you give us an idea what that is speaking about, Dr. Griffo, when it talks about the goal?
Yes, as I think it's Daniel chapter 2, something, Daniel with a 2, but that's that description that gives this being that they see that has the head of gold, the arms of silver, then you got tin and brass and lead and earth that when you go down to his feet. So it's talking about the different stages of consciousness. The lower you are on the precious metal scale, the lower your consciousness is. Once you get up to the silver and the gold, then you have a higher state of consciousness. So it's talking about those four states of consciousness as it relates to the precious metals: gold, silver, copper, and iron. So as you go through a 24,000 year cycle, each cycle is broken up into 4 6,000 year cycles. So for 6,000 years, there'll be a lead cycle or iron cycle. 6,000 years, there'll be like a copper cycle. For 6,000 years, there'll be a silver cycle. And then for 6,000 years, there'll be a gold cycle. When you're in the gold cycle, which we've just come around to under the age of Aquarius, that's when you're at the highest states of consciousness. So this will permeate around the world. But
So I guess what I'm thinking is that when it talks about you need a hot and you need a cold, it's almost sounding, Dr. Griffo, like you really couldn't move to that higher cycle until we got to this part of where we are now. So you need a hot and you need the cold. So it's telling us what we are, or do we have a choice? Could we have moved to that higher consciousness?
Not as a collective. You're absolutely right. Not as a collective. Individually, yes, there have been some that would raise to that higher states, and we would call them prophets and geniuses and warlocks and wizards and magi, etc. But as a collective, no, ma'am. You're absolutely right.
So now what you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that because of where we are now, we're into the state of Aquarius, higher consciousness. That means it is what it is now. People are operating now from a higher consciousness versus from vibrating from that lower level, and it just not a select few people or initiates, as we call them, that can attain this. It's available. It can be obtained by everybody now, and it could have been obtained by everybody before, but people just didn't choose to do the work. It sounds to me now like this has been poured into us versus us trying to go out there and drink it.
Right. I agree. Not to take away Pastor Archie's time, so we'll make this quick. But you're absolutely right. In Hindu theology, they have what they call the yugas, Y-U-G-I. YUGA, and each one of those is again divided up into like a 6,000 year cycle, and each cycle you have different consciousness levels. So we just came out of the lead consciousness level where there was little to no intellect and higher thoughts, and now we're into the golden age. The beginning, the cycle started over again. And now we're into where there's going to be abundance of consciousness, starting out with the Aquarian age, which is ruled by air, and air is the mental. So, absolutely.
That makes sense. And I just one more thing before I would pass it back over to you. And this makes sense to me now when it says you need a hot or a cold, because oftentimes we obtain an education, master's, in colleges and things like that. And we think that we got it. We think that we know, but what this is telling us, you need the hot or you're not cold either. And yeah, you have all this intellect, but you don't have the higher intellect. You don't have the higher consciousness. You think you got this, but you really don't. You have knowledge, but you have no understanding of what we're talking about as it relates to the higher consciousness. This is what this is telling us.
Well, see, you're hitting it right on the head, because what has been the one that is announcing to us is the Logos himself, the cosmic substance, the pineal gland, where all the power is at. We think we are there, but we're not there. That is the atrophied, unpaired eye of science. which when it talks about the eye salve, this is the pineal gland. This is where God is. This is now if God is telling you that you don't have all that you think you have, who are you to say that you do, because you haven't gotten there? But the lower self is saying that you have gotten there, but the God himself, the actual logos, the cosmic substance is making it known that, hey, wait a minute, you're not there. You're saying you're there. You're not hot or cold. You're not close. So the things that you think you know, I'm gonna spew them back out, because you don't know it, because the initiate had to know what he or she was referring to and talking, had to know the parts of the body. I had to think about this down through the week. What is this doing for me? How is it that we're supposed to take this and look at what we're doing now and how we're thinking? I look at all the times I fast, for 3 days and 3 nights, weeks at the time, no food, no water, nothing. During those times, you are able to think more clearer, believe it or not. I mean, Lord, if you never really fasted before, someone watching may want to try it really fast and come to understand how you begin to see things and or how things come to you. And we're saying here that the Lord self is saying that, oh yeah, I got it. I understand what God is about. You got people that are seers and sages, and but it says that when you actually get it, your reward would be to share the throne of God. But now you're there, the pineal gland. You're there, and it talks about the white garment, refers to the moon, which is it says that the logos have the semblance of Isis, which is the moon, the white armed garment. Goddess, I'm sorry, the white armed goddess that rules the 4 seasons and the waters. The corresponding vowel is A, and attributes of glory and authority. Now, when you are there, when you are there, you are no longer controlled by. I have to keep saying those that Lord consciousness, that animalistic way of thinking. Once you're there, where God rules at in the pineal gland, you're there. You are going to share the throne of God. That's where it says you are now sharing the throne of God. You are able to think on that higher level. You're not just warm, but you're hot. So now, and as we think about the area that we're talking about, that thyroid area, that communication area, you got to know that you are right. You can't just think it.
I want to just mention one thing, because I know we're right at the end of this chapter 3, and I just want to bring this to people's attention. And that's, you think about when people talked about Jesus, and they were saying, well, Jesus is sitting on the throne on the right hand side with the Father. So now just keep this in mind as you realize that it was because if there was a person by the name of Jesus in the stories, then that person had risen to a higher consciousness. And when they saying he's sitting on the throne with God, that's exactly what they're saying, is that he had risen to a higher consciousness, not some physical person sitting up on the throne, looking down and ruling with God. We all rule with God when we raise our consciousness. And I wanted to share that as we move into chapter 4.
I mean, to me, when I read the last 4 verses in this chapter, it sounds like to me a summation of all that we've gone through with all the other churches. Doctor, could you comment? I mean, you think that's right?
I absolutely agree with the goddess Anila. She hit it on the head, as when you sup with God and you reside with God, you've raised your consciousness up to the temple or the pineal area, where those other 2 glands are, the pituitary as well as the thalamus. Those are the 3. So the pineal would represent God, The pituitary would represent the wife of God, and then the thalamus would represent the son of God. So I definitely agree with you, Brother Mark, about those last three, or summation of what we've been talking about during this whole chapter. And then as we get into chapter 4, it will make it more, it will get more into it, because now you're going to start to describe certain physical characteristics of the brain as you go into chapter 4.
Excellent. Archie, you got anything else on this?
That's gonna just about sum it up for chapter 3, because it is sort of a summation as you think about it, because on the end it says, in the 7 benedictions contained in the Apocalypse, 12 attributes are given of these. 3 are assigned to the Son, 2 to each of the members of the higher triad, and 1 to each of the lower. When the 2 triads, the Son is always the center, are parallel, the result is a fourfold system in which divine faculty stands alone and the other faculties are paired. So yeah, it does, right in the center, God himself, the Son, which the S-U-N, not the S-O-N.
Dr. Griffith, we're going to move on to you and talk about chapter 4, which, man, I'll tell you what, this thing, just starting off with it, is so full of symbology that, I mean, to me, I'm looking forward to you breaking this down. But the first question that springs into my mind, if you read the first couple of verses, they talk about being in spirit and one who is on the throne, trumpets blowing. Let's just take off from there, if you would.
Okay, so when you're looking at, when it talks about the trumpet, as we've spoke about in previous other recordings, your body is divided in to 12 sections based off of the zodiac, with the beginning being Aries, then Taurus and Gemini and Cancer, and going on down your body. So when you're talking about the trumpet area, you're talking about Aries. Aries, the reason why Aries deals with the trumpet is because Moses, as we know, when the Jews came out of bondage and they went to the mountain, and Moses went up to talk to God, and when he came down, the children of Israel were still worshiping a golden calf. Well, the golden calf is Taurus, and they were supposed to move on up into Aries. So Moses ushered in, because he got mad at him and told him, you know, this is idol worship, because we moved out of the age of Taurus, which is the bull, and now we're moving into the age of Aries, which is fire, which is why Moses, a lot of the things that dealt with Moses dealt with fire, burning bush, God, you know, being up on a high mountain where there's smoke, like a volcano, etc. But also this is the ram, or when the Jews signal in the new year, they would blow the shofar's horn, S-H-O-F-A-R, which is like a trumpet. So this is the trumpet that you're speaking of as you're going up from this area. And I mean, from this area on up to this area, you're going now from dealing with the bull to dealing with the ram, and or the trumpet, the shofar, which is the ram's horn. Again, this is why a good majority of all of your major prophets in the Bible were called shepherds, because shepherds looked over the flock. This is where the flock is. This is where the sheep are. This is where the ox are, and then down where your knees are is where the goats are. So you've got these different animals that you're dealing with. So then this shepherd who rules this area must control these lower animals down here as they go down. So and then cut up to me, and we're going to go on to number 2 now. And immediately I was in the spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. The throne, of course, as Sister Anala spoke of earlier, is this region of the brain where God resides, where the pineal gland is. Because even if you look in medical terminology, you have something in your brain called fornix. And the fornix is related to the hippocampus area, which is related to the amygdala. These are just areas of your brain that deals with the area that surrounds the pineal gland, the pituitary, and the thalamus. The thalamus is also called like what's the word? Furnace. That's it. That's my English is bad today. Furnace. If you look up in the skies around the age where the Taurus constellation is, there's also a star system called Fornax, which also means furnace or altar. This is why Moses set up altars, and they would go and they would sacrifice things on the altar. Because as you rise up and you bring the goat from Capricorn down in your knees and rise it up, it's got to come to this altar and be subdued or slaughtered. So as you slaughter, you rising up that energy, you slaying the bull, you're sacrificing the bull, you're sacrificing the ram, you're sacrificing the goat, which is always those three animals that were sacrificed in the Bible. As you rise up and you cut off that negative energy and you bring it up, you're sacrificing those animals and you're giving them to God. You're sacrificing unto God, who is in the throne area. Again, going back to what Pastor Archie was saying when he talked about Isis and white raiment and how that represented the throne. Well, if you look at any pictures of Isis, she's always near the throne, or she has the throne on her head. And also her husband and brother Osiris was seated on the throne by her permission. So we all understand that Isis even means, or the name Aset in ancient Egypt meant throne. Inside of your brain, underneath, there's an area that looks like a throne that's surrounded by what they call the sphenoid bone. We've talked about that before. SPHENOID, sphenoid bone. And inside of the sphenoid bone is a little indentation that in the Turkish language, it means seat, aka throne. So when you're going up to God's throne, you're raising that vibration up to this particular area of the brain. That's all it's talking about. So that one that sits on that throne there is the pineal gland. Then on number 3, and he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow around the throne in sight like unto an emerald. Again, as these colors that are associated with these chakras, you look at all of them, they look like the rainbow. That's the same color scheme as the rainbow. It is absolutely the same color scheme as the rainbow. And then the LGBTQ community, they flipped it, and they got the red up top and the purple on the bottom, but it's the same color scheme. So then this is where your rainbow comes in.
Question, right quick, Doc, before you go too far. That the soft spot and mothers, when them babies born, I don't know. All my babies born, I remember the older folks saying you got to make sure you shake that head right. Shake that head, because there's a soft spot up there.
Right.
And could you open it up a little bit, because that talks about the crown of a baby's head, or there's the door open in the sky, that soft spot. Sometimes it doesn't go away, does it?
No, sometimes it doesn't. As we learn with our bodies, when we're born, we have the soft head, we have the pulsating coming from the crown chakra. You know what I mean? That's the soft spot that people see, as well as in our sexual region when we're born, we have what we call the sacrum. The sacrum is 5 bones that are at that point, there are 5 different bones. But as you get older, those 5 bones close up to become one bone. And it becomes just one bone. This is when you remember the story of Jacob fighting and wrestling with the angel. And they said when he went to sleep on one stone, but when he woke up, it was many stones, or it was stones, and then it changed to one stone. So it was the fusing of those 5 bones to become one bone. This is why when you're looking at your skeletal system, you don't necessarily count 33 individual vertebrae, but we know when you're born, those 5 come into one, fuse into one. And then you got your coccyx, which is made up of 4, that's the tailbone. And then as you're going up, your spinal column is 12 and 7 and 12 and 7. Those first 7 represent the 7 archangels. And so as you're going back down your body, you know what I mean, you're counting those 33. So what it is that over time our bodies transform, or as Jesus' way was transfigured, you know what I mean, our bodies transform and become more of a skeletal system as opposed to what appears to be more cartilage. Now, as we go into the verse 4, and around the throne were 24 seats. Inside of our brains, we have what they call cranial nerves. So as you was just saying a minute ago about how certain things are paired, with your cranial nerves, is 12 cranial nerves and they're all paired. So 12 paired is 12 plus 12 is how many? 24. So these are your 24 elders that sit around the throne because they encompass the pineal, pituitary, and thalamus glands of your body. These 12 glands regulate certain parts of our body. Certain parts of it regulate the tongue. Certain parts of it regulate the vision. We got some that go from here, that go all the way down into the stomach, that deal with our pneumogastric, our breathing and our stomach areas. So then these 12 cranial nerves, actually, which is 24 because they're paired, is your 24 seats that sit around, or the 24 elders that sit around the throne of God, arraigned in white. Because of course, white, if we're getting back to alchemy, remember, you got black as the base, red that's burning the black, and then what's left is the white ashes. After you've been purified, baptized, come up out of it on the other side, you're left with the whiteness, which is the pureness. So that's why, another reason why they use white and always associate it with women. Did that answer your question, or do I need to go? Okay.
I do have a, I have a question, or I know in the Jewish religion, a lot of the men and even their boys, they shave the top of their head. Is that because they're trying to open this up so it could see, or it could, be more? Why are they doing that?
Well, they understand that is the crown chakra. They understand that energy comes in and out of that portal, just like for those, especially you had children. So I'm not trying to get in your business, but certain women, when they have children, they are cut from their vaginal area to their anus area, and that middle point is called the perineum, right? That's another energy point where energy comes in and escapes, the same way that at the top of your chakra, your crown, it comes in and goes out. So you have these energy points where energy is being transferred in and out of your body.
Final question for me. I know that the Bible, people have taken these things so literally. We didn't understand that you're talking Taurus the bull. You didn't understand it was talking about the zodiac. And even in business, you have people that make sure there are 24 people on their board of directors and all that. So they have emulated a lot of this in the Bible so that they can be more successful. And that's what we're trying to get over to people, is that you can take the same way the 24 elders are around, you can emulate some of those things right here on earth to cause success to be born in your world as well.
Exactly the reason why they call those businesses corporations, because as I think we've spoke about this before, corporations, and the root word is corpse. Who was the original corpse? The sun. And the sun conquered death. So then all businesses want to conquer death. Where right now we're in the death season, where after the fall and going into the winter where there's less commerce. So those businesses started to suffer. So they had to create holidays to generate money to make sure they went into the winter solstice and came out and they were successful and they rose again, or what the stock market calls a bull market, because
right.
The bull is plowing forward, whereas the bear is hibernating. It's about to go into a deep slumber. So then you're absolutely right. They took the concept of the body and they created their corporations. They took the concept of the body and they don't have a 13th floor. You follow what I'm saying? Because they understand the power of the number 12 as well as the multiplication of it. So you're absolutely right.
Why animals, Dr. Gripper? Why the use of so many animals? Is it because of the zodiac signs represent the animal? Why animals?
It was the animals that lived in the area where these people are. So in Egypt, you know, you look at the zodiac and they got hippopotamus on there. They have lions on there. You follow what I'm saying? They have monkeys.
Yes.
But in China, they don't have those things. They got rats and elephants and you know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Excuse me.
Okay, that's good.
So then that's how this particular thing was created. And this is the origin of the whole lion is king of the jungle, because Leo is the king of the zodiac and Leo is the lion. And out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. Now, again, as we said in previous recordings, you have different planets that rule the different areas of the body and different chakras. So at the top is Saturn, next is Jupiter, and then Mars, and then the sun, and then going down your body. So at the very top is Saturn, and the next is Jupiter, then Mars, then the sun. The sun is in the green, and then coming down, we got Venus, then Mercury, and then lastly the moon. And that goes in order of rotation and how long it takes for each one of these planets to rotate around the sun. Now, what we know about Jupiter is an electrical planet, and it has thunderstorms, electricity, etc. So this is where you're coming from. This is the whole concept of a Zeus sitting on the throne throwing electric bolts, because Zeus and Jupiter is the same planet, and it rules this area of the body, the voice of many waters, electrical, water, storms. So this is all you're talking about. It is you're talking about the chakras, but the planet that rules the chakras and the thing that it's responsible for. Where are we now? Okay, verse 6. And before the throne, there was a sea of glass like unto crystal in the midst of the throne, and around the throne were the 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. Now, the 4 beasts, as we're going to read in chapter 7, that sit around the throne are the 4 cardinal points in the zodiac. One being Aries. I'm sorry, the fixed points, not the cardinal points, the fixed points. One being Taurus, which is the calf or bull. Next is Leo, the lion. Then after that would be Scorpio, but they didn't use a Scorpio, they used an eagle back in the day. So this is where you would get your wings from. And then lastly would be Aquarius, which is the man, because Aquarius would represent the masculine part or the feminine part, however you want to look at it. But it was always those 4 fixed points of the zodiac. Now, those were overlaid by, we just had Groundhog's Day, right? So if you're looking at the calendar, if you go from spring, well, we just came out of winter. So from winter to spring takes 90 days or 13 weeks. Half of that is 45 days of what they call a cross quarter day. So then on each cross quarter day, as you go around the 365-degree calendar, you're going to have what they call a fixed sign. So at the cross quarter day between winter and spring is what's the Groundhog's Day. The cross quarter day, which is in Aquarius, the cross quarter day between spring and summer is Taurus. Okay. And then the cross quarter day between spring and fall is Leo, and the cross quarter day between fall and spring is Scorpio. So then, but these are overlaid by the European holidays of Groundhog Day, May 1st, May Day. There's a day in August, and then there's Halloween, which is around October 31st, November 1st. So these cross quarter days represent these 4 beasts that surround the throne, as it deals with the 20 and 4 elders, which are nothing but, again, your cranial nerves, but it's also a play on the zodiac.
What usefulness is the fact that we know about the four beasts around the throne. And so would that mean that if I knew we were in that particular season at that time, I could go and read about what does that do for me?
Well, you would know a multitude of things. What season we're in, whether it's the harvesting season or the reaping season, whether it is the time that we're going to have the rainy season. So it was a clock, you know what I mean, that alarmed us to certain things that were happening in the year where, you know, you couldn't, before there was an almanac made or before there was a actual clock with 12 hours on a day or, you know, a calendar, they had these particular ways because they studied the stars to know that on certain days, like in Egypt, they knew around June 23rd, July 23rd, the Nile would flood. So they would prepare for that. And so that became a national holiday when Sirius would rise over the horizon. Okay.
Gotcha. So also, so what that tells me is when I study the stars, that tells me I may not want to start this business right now because that might not be my harvest time. That tells me I may not want to do ABC. And I know during that time it was based on more farming and things like that. So, and I remember my grandmother, and we talked about this before, and Pastor Archer remembered this. She used that almanac so that she would know when to plant her gardens. And so now moving away from the gardens, we know when to send that letter to introduce ourselves to a particular company because we want to do business with them because it's the harvest season. Absolutely. And that's what we use this for then.
And for those who are not familiar, we just entered Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde started, I think, about a week ago, and it's going to go for a total of 21 days. And when you're in Mercury retrograde, you do not sign contracts. You do not start anything new because Mercury deals with communication, one, travel, and commerce. So all of those things will be negatively affected during the period that Mercury is retrograde, being that Mercury is the god of communication, or AKA in the Bible would be the angel Gabriel, because he was the messenger God. And this is how we came up with the word, when somebody talks a lot, they got the gift of Gab, Gabriel.
So, you know, and I know Thomas is probably written to go, but let's say one more thing. So people been sitting around and praying and waiting they want God to tell them, but God already told them. The God within you is already telling you what to do because he gave you the signs and the symbols and all this, and all you have to do is pay attention to that instead of like asking for a message. Like I, tell people, well, I got to go see what God say. Wait, it's already in you. So I got you.
Absolutely.
Hey, can we not leave the little kids? I know, Mark, I know you own us today, but look, the children, the little children, you ever thought about your little kids when they're sitting around playing? I watch my granddaughter a lot of times. She's talking to about 3 or 4 different people, got all these ideals and you talking about, girl, what in the world, who you talking to? Mm-hmm. The pineal gland is open at a certain age, yes. During a certain time, that gland is open. And young people know, the babies know that they're talking. We think they're talking, girl, so, stop talking to yourself. No, but they are actually saying some things. Right. But then after a while, that gradually begins to close.
That's because
shut them down.
The pineal gland the pineal gland it crystallizes. You follow? So then when you go into this next verse, where it talks about and glass like unto a crystal, that's what's happening there, is what some people say that the pineal gland is calcified. But you know what I mean? So you have to uncalcify the gland, but it does crystallize. So then that's where it talks about this crystal city and, all of these different gems and things like that. But you're absolutely right, man. Y'all are making it so easy for me. I don't have to say anything.
But I wanted to say this, think about this. It says in the last days, God's gonna pour his spirit upon everybody. But think about what that's really saying. It's saying, and Dr. Griffo said that, is that we're in this time now that we are all connected into this higher consciousness. And that's what it was talking about, the spirit, not only just grown people, but children, as you said, Pastor Archie. Right. So we're in this time now that people are just waking up and they're conscious because that's what we were told, but we didn't understand what that was. We thought it was gonna be the end of the day and the world was going to end and then we're going to know everything. That wouldn't make much sense when you think about it. Why would they give her all the information and the world's getting ready to end right now. So that wasn't talking about that.
So it gets back to like I said, we're in Mercury, and Mercury affects communication. So then people that you normally have a great communication with is going to be affected for the next 21 days. People, I mean, like I say, if you get your car worked on, you might have problems with that car being worked on after that 21 days when Mercury decides to go direct. So then there's a lot of things that could happen during this next 21 days that we're not familiar with. If you got to travel, make sure you allot extra time just to take into account that something may go wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, there's going to be your cell phones are going to start to act up. Different parts of your communication is going to act up because Mercury is in retrograde. And again, if you remember in the Bible, anytime there was an announcement made and God sent angels, Gabriel was always one of the angels that came and spoke on behalf of God. He was the communicator God, or AKA Mercury. So then we have, once we start to make the connections, we can see how easy the story flows with what the ancients had as cosmologies when they assigned certain deities certain names and certain aspects and characteristics.
Mercury retrograde seems to happen like every 28 days, every so often. I mean, can retrograde be a positive thing, or it's always don't do this?
It can be a positive thing. There's certain crystals you can wear that could ward off certain effects of the retrograde. There's certain things that you could do to help you avoid certain things, that are associated with the retrograde. But ultimately, depending on your natal chart and you're being in sync with nature, you could lessen the effects of a retrograde. Absolutely.
All right. Well, folks, we gotta wrap it up right there. That's an hour, believe it or not. That was a great conversation. We're gonna pick it up next week. I guess we're gonna be around 7 or 8.
Yes. Yeah. Verse 7.
Okay, we'll do that then. Nala, have you got anything to close up with, or are you good?
No, I'm good. I just want to say to Dr. Griffo, I don't know what book because I know you have published several books, but I know that you have a book out there that's talking about some of the things that you're sharing with our audience. So I want to pass it to Dr. Griffo and just let him talk about, or let him say what that book is, because I know that most people are not going to remember all the things you talked about, but they would love to go read about what you're talking about.
Sure.
So what book would that be?
Absolutely. There are actually 2 of them, and I'm about to start working on a third. But the first one is the one that's in Brother Mark's background, God, the Bible, the planets in your body. And that is the one that I'm pulling from the most. And then to get even more in depth, after that was Allah, Venus, Allah, the Quran, Venus, and you. And that's also going more into the chakras and alchemy. And when the one that we're working on the next is going to be dealing with the Anunnaki, Sumerians, Nibiru, and it's going to deal with the mineral cell salts. So that's something that we're going to get into. With each book, we try to give you something that deals with your body to help you work on your physical body as well as your spiritual body, as well as teaching you about these books and how they're really telling you about the material, the 3 astral you, the physical you, the mental you. So yes, we're looking at it from a holistic perspective, but thank you.
Sure. All right then. All right, let's sign off then. And all of us here with SRC want to thank the audience, as always, for sitting in on today's presentation. Our next episode in this series of the Revelation will be a week from today on the 14th of February at 10 o'clock Eastern. So please join us. We will really appreciate everyone's patronage and encourage you to email us your questions or comments at shiftingreligiousconcept@gmail.com. If anyone is interested in advertising with SRC, please contact us at that same email. And don't forget that this presentation will be available on YouTube within the next few days. Even if you attended today's program, please go to the Shifting Religious Concepts channel and give us a thumbs up and subscribe. This is one of the few ways we get public attention, and it really helps us promote the SRC mission. If you're not subscribed to our newsletter, go to shiftingreligiousconcepts.com/registration and join us. That does it for all of us. We wish you all peace, health, wisdom, and love, of course.